We're live.
Oh, yay! Welcome, everyone. I am so excited. We are so excited to be here with you today. Welcome to the Reclaiming Soul Work podcast, where we are reclaiming the sacred and soul work for healers, practitioners, clinicians, social workers, one episode at a time. My name is Biany. I am your co host. And this is my lovely friend, my sister friend and co host, Sequoya. And, we are so hype and so happy to be here because this is our first episode and it's our introductory episode. It's the episode where we're going to tell you a little more about us, about who we are, why this podcast right now, and what you can expect from us. So thanks for being here with us right now in this moment at Reclaiming Soul Work. So I'm going to pass it over to Sequoia now to introduce us officially.
So, welcome, y'all. This is the Reclaiming Soul Work podcast. It's a heart centered podcast by two queer Black femme healers and spiritual social workers who explore the intersection of magic, spirituality, identity, and ancestral connections through the lenses of tarot, divination, mysticism, mental health, and everything in between. As Biany mentioned, my name is Sequoia, and I use she and her pronouns. I am also living and working in Anchorage, Alaska, on Dena'ina land. I also work across different states and want to acknowledge that land as well. A little bit more about me, my family is from the South, from Selma, Alabama. And so in my land acknowledgement, and then also just, paying tribute to my ancestors, just want to acknowledge, those Southern roots. What else can I say? My sun sign is Aquarius. And so having a podcast with my friend to talk about all of these topics is definitely right up my alley. So welcome
Yes.
everyone. So happy, for y'all to be here with us.
Oh, that was lovely. I love that you are honoring the roots, like your roots, like Selma, Alabama. I
Yes.
mean, yes. My name is Biany, and I use she, they pronouns. I'm trying not to talk fast because I know my New York comes out, but yeah, might as well tell you. I am living in Philadelphia, and I am living on Lenape land. Um, but I was born and raised in the Bronx, in Muncie, Lenape land, and I'm a Bronxite through and through. Um, but my family, my ancestors, the people that raised me, are from Dominican Republic. So I identify as a Black Dominican, um, non-binary femme, and yeah, just thinking about like lineages. Like I really appreciate that, Sequoia, reminding us of our lineage and where we come from. And so, you know, yeah, I'm thinking of Santo Domingo. That's where my folks are from.
Mhm.
Thinking about the ancestors there, my African, my Taino, my Arawak, my European ancestors. Um, and I am a healer. I'm a bruja. I'm a doula. I'm a parent. I'm a guide. I'm all those things and more. And I'm super passionate about talking about spirituality, mental health, mysticism. And it was so nice to just be in community with Sequoia. And we're so excited to do this, to be in community with you. We hope you are going to have a good time tuning into us and hearing about these wonderful, wonderful topics that we are going to soon launch. Um, so let's get into the topic, right? Um, so, Sequoia, maybe we could think about a little bit about how we met, so folks can
Yeah.
understand. You're all the way in Alaska. I'm all the way in Philly. Like, how did this happen?
Yes.
Do you want to? Do you want to start?
Sure, sure. Yeah. So, based on just the kind of focus of the podcast, um, our interests brought us together. So I was looking for more networking and community around folks that were utilizing tarot in their counseling, therapy, social work sessions with folks, specifically around like how to use tarot to just help folks process emotions, trauma, so on and so
Mhm.
forth. And so ran across a Facebook group, and it was specifically focused around like psychotherapy and tarot. And I'm like, wow, this looks like the place for me. Started to just talk more with the main like moderator of that group. And yeah, became a moderator, and that's how Biany and I got connected, was through a Facebook group.
And it's important to note that we got connected during the
Yeah.
pandemic. We
Yeah.
like so many of us wanting to build community as
Mhm.
spiritual social workers, as healers, as therapists. We wanted to build community, and we were looking for like minds. As Sequoia said, I also love tarot and divination, working with oracle cards as well. And we came across this Facebook group that we joined for therapists who work with tarot, whether personally or with their clients. And the group had a short shelf life, but our relationship grew from that experience. And I was glad that Sequoia reached out to me and we connected. And for those that are tuning in, like this seed that we planted was like our relationship, as well as the seed of this podcast. Um, and we went with the cycles of the moon. We didn't really rush through it. We spent a lot of time building our relationship. So it was like in the summer, maybe it was like, I don't remember, maybe Cancer season, Leo season, I don't remember, but I know that we planted this seed and we really tended to it and took our time to help this grow. And here we are,
Yes.
launching this podcast. Um, and I'll say a little bit about why we decided to start a podcast, right? Because people might be wondering, well, but why this podcast? Why reclaiming soul work? And you know, and I would love, Sequoia, for you to add too. But I'll say is that part of it for us is that we felt like in our field we are both social workers, trained social workers, clinical social workers, and we even felt like personally in our training that the soul in social work was missing, and feeling that um, it's time for us to reclaim the sacredness and healing, reclaiming the soul part of the work in healing. And we wanted a space to do that. We wanted a space for clinicians, for practitioners, for those who are not practitioners, who also really care about spirituality as a form of healing, and who are interested in mysticism and divination and how that intersects with mental health. We felt like that was sorely missing in our profession and in our community. And, the same way that we were looking for this group, and we found each other, we felt like, hey, maybe it's time for us to connect and then build community around that. So we hope that you feel connected, and that you are, you stay tuned to like what we'll be offering in the future. But yes, Sequoia, do you want to add anything
Yeah,
before I
yeah.
ramble?
Thank you for that. No, it's fine. It's fine. And I appreciate that. Yeah, everything, that Biani shared is like right on point with, our initial kind of conversations, about not only wanting to, get to know each other more, know about each other's practices, ways that we can support each other, but then also be a support to the community. Personally, I've been, I would say, on a healing and spiritual journey, through my own kind of trauma, for about 3 years now. And in me understanding, in me understanding not only what my gifts are around spirituality, but then also, me as someone who needs support, through some of these traumas and emotions and things like that. Um, I sought to just find more resources, around specifically Black providers, queer providers, kind of all the intersections that of my identity, um, and not really coming up with too much, and so that was definitely, it can be a little discouraging, but through this Facebook group and then continuing to learn more and research more and also put myself out there more, related to interweaving like spirituality into my therapy sessions. That is definitely like one of the, not really intentions, but just reflection points about why I'm putting energy into this type of, offering, why I feel that it's important, I think that there are a lot of providers of mental health, healers, practitioners, however you identify, that again are not only folks that are providing these type of services and offerings and wellness opportunities for others, but then we're also people who want to experience, these type of offerings as well. We want to take off our hats, with being in those type of roles and really be in community with other people and learn from other people, and grow and understand. And so this podcast, for me is definitely about, um, just being able to provide a space and an offering for other folks that, have these type of interests, that might be looking for, people to have just enriching conversations with. Is that all I want to say about that? I think so. I think so. And, podcasts seem like, um, I don't want to say an easy way, but a way that folks are connecting now, you know, not only about connecting, but then too, um, getting out information, one of the things also, I can say this, one of the other reasons why, it's important to me that another reason why this podcast is important to me is because, you know, spirituality and social work, tarot and therapy are usually not kind of in conversations that I have, outside of certain spaces. And so this podcast, in the same energy of getting information out, I want to, also let folks know that there are, again, practitioners, healers, however, providers, however you identify, that are, incorporating these type of ancestral, practices into therapy. Like that is a thing. And so, yeah, I think that, this podcast will be a way for folks to, I keep wanting to say the word normalize. Destigmatize.
Yeah.
That's the word. This podcast to me is about destigmatizing tarot and therapy, or spirituality and therapy and social work. Yeah.
I love that. I love that you're also centering that this is a space for us too, not just as clinicians, but as people who
Mhm.
are like, I'm a total tarot nerd. I'm also a total like Dharma nerd. Like I love spirituality and mysticism. And I was drawn to that before I became a therapist, before I went into the
Mhm.
field. And in some ways, our training kind of never mentioned it, never talked about it. And I think it's time that we bring that, but it always existed, right? And
Yes.
for us, the title of reclaiming soul work is important because we're reclaiming what's been kind of lost. It's always been there. And we want this space for ourselves and for you, um, to have a space where we talk about healing that is not separate from like the soul work, the spiritual work.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, we also, benefit from that too. We're going to learn and grow as well too. Like we're going to learn and grow with you. Um,
Yes.
and so we'll share a little bit about like our goals for the podcast, our vision for it, what we hope will happen in this podcast space. um, and I want to make sure I'm like getting it right, but you know, we really care about this space being a space where magic isn't something that gets put aside. We want to talk about magic up front, talking about spirituality and mysticism and other healing modalities that we as healers, but as people working on our healing, we weave into our journey. And those are the things we want to bring into the podcast. So we're hoping to introduce healers of color and other healers in this space to like offer you an opportunity to like build your own healing toolkit in a way. And we're looking for ways to incorporate spirituality into to the work of healing and therapy and clinical social work, and for the counselors and practitioners out there. And we want to use this platform to share and bring other folks in the community who are doing this work. Like we want to get it out of hiding. It's been in the closet. So yes, as two queer Black femme healers, like we're all about queering spirituality. We're all about queering healing and queering social work. And
Mhm.
we want to get it out of the closet because it's hiding for too long. So many of us do this work in like solitude or in isolation, which is great. It's important for your practice. But how about joining us on a podcast and building community, and building a space where you'll be seen here, and that there's a place for you here too, to talk about the things that might seem like Sequoia said, might have been stigmatized, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, you want to add anything?
Yeah. I wanted to go back to what you were saying about especially with school and your program and licensing and you know other therapists and them knowing, that you incorporate spirituality or ancestral practices, into your interventions for your clients. The stigma around that is really interesting, especially, from, I want to say, especially from like the PLC therapist, healer, community, but then also specifically Black folks. There is an interesting divide between, a therapist that is more faith based,
Mm.
if you will, and then a therapist or a social worker that is, spiritual. And that's definitely something that Biany and I are exploring more. When we say that, or not even when we are engaging with other folks and, entering other spaces, whether that be Facebook groups, like online things or in-person things, what do folks mean when they say, that they're spiritual, again, social worker, therapist, whatever. One of the reasons that that's important, is because for me, my queer identity, there is just stigma around, of course, being LGBTQIA plus, and then the intersections of religion, organized religion. But then when we think about it from a spiritual standpoint, as a practitioner, like what does that mean? So this podcast, will kind of help to give an example or just show folks, like when we say that we're spiritual social workers, like what does that actually mean? And again, when I'm saying, that I'm incorporating spirituality into my interventions, I am not only coming from the place or the lens that my client is coming from, because I have clients that lean more towards the religious side of things. Um, and they can appreciate, just the approach that I have with them. And so, again, when we think about spirituality, I'm talking about like my practice around that is more about ancestral practices. It's about lineage. Remembering. It's about remembering, who you are, who I am, who we are collectively, and what does that journey and walk look like when you are processing trauma?
Mm-hmm. I love that. I appreciate you making the distinction about spirituality and like faith based, because they feel different to me as well. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, I mean, we will talk. Y'all gonna have to just tune in. I'm gonna reserve this comment. I'm not even gonna say it, but it is about this idea of faith-based sort of practitioners versus like spiritual practitioners. And I agree. We are more spiritual practitioners, and a lot of the way that I approach my work is around helping people reclaim their ancestral connections. And this idea of remembering is really powerful, because we're also both like trauma-based therapists, and we know that what happens when we experience trauma and what happens to our, like, the disconnect that it creates. And we think spirituality is an important tool in somebody's toolkit, in somebody's healing toolkit. And I know so many like folks who are in this like profession who are scared to ask people they work with or clients, like, you have to ask, get curious with them about where they find grounding and what their connection to spirituality. That's different than religion, and
Mm-hmm.
we, even in our work, we found like that was missing in the conversation. And another thing too is like there's something spiritual about helping people reclaim the wisdom that they've always had.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, reclaiming soul work is about that, helping people remember the truth of who they are, remember their self with a capital S, remembering their benevolent ancestors and who guide them on this path, and ancestors who are not just quote unquote human form, but our nature ancestors, our spiritual ancestors, our ancestors who aren't related to us, quote unquote, who aren't our, however, whatever that means, right? But it is about remembering. We see healing as remembering. And again, we want to reclaim the sacred back. Like it's time.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to do that in our profession.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it's also connected to us decolonizing our practices. And we know that decolonizing is such a, like it term right now,
I was gonna say
especially on social
buzzword.
media.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a buzzword, definitely a
Mm-hmm.
buzzword. But think about it as like anti-colonial, decolonizing, coming back to ancestral practices. We're all about that, and that you will hear that through and through in our work. And when you tune into the podcast, like this is really about remembering. And yeah, I love that. Thank you for that reminder. Like it's about helping folks remember their truth, remember their connection to source, or however that form means. And we feel like it's important too as queer folks, like, we're here. We're here doing that work too. We're here doing that work of spirituality and reclamation and ancestral connections. So yeah, I mean,
I was gonna say, can we
yeah.
talk? Can we talk a little bit more of, especially about like queer identity? In this context, I I think it's really interesting, when having a conversation. So I identify as a queer femme. And so unless I am talking about specific things, like I have to say that to people. Um, and and I'm gonna specifically talk about, Black spaces. When talking to folks in Black spaces, one about spirituality, and then we're gonna throw in the layer of queerness, again, sometimes there is some resistance to me having a seat at the table. And it just kind of reaffirms, not only my own personal experiences, but the experiences that my clients have, or folks in the community, my friends, my family members, And so I'm hoping too that this podcast helps with, for me, to really root more in what does queer divinity mean to me? What does queer spirituality, what does that mean?
Mm.
The other thing that I want to add to this too is, I hope that we have in the future some conversations about POC or Black theorists, or folks that have done work, around like archetypes and, shadow work and just other aspects of spirituality. Carl Jung is usually the one that, folks reference a lot, related to just some of the larger concepts around like spirituality and things like that. And yes, and also like there are other people too, so um
Mm.
yeah, like those are kind of the two additional areas that um I'm just reflecting on related to the podcast.
I really appreciate that. We are it's time for us to make space for that. Thinking about what it just made me thinking about like a queer spirituality, like a Black queer, like, and also
Yeah.
thinking about, I mean, it's making me think about like spiritual bypassing too when you say that.
Oh,
Um,
say
like
more.
just thinking, yeah, like I was having a reaction, and that's important because the body carries so much wisdom, right? So we listen to our bodies, and thinking about this metaphoric seat at the table and how many times
Mhm.
um, I have felt like parts of me didn't belong at the table. Um, Whether that meant being like as a Black Latinx person, being non binary, being femme, or like people seeing parts of you and projecting those parts, like, oh, you look a certain way. So I'm going to project like that's who you are based on how I see you. And how that can feel really isolating, like not feeling like there's really space for you. So
Yeah.
like the seat at the table has its limitations. Like, okay, I can sit at this table, but I got to make sure I hide everything else that you don't like about me, quote unquote. And I think it's something to talk about because it does feel traumatizing and it feels like sad. And it's also not the way that I imagine like my queerness. Like all of me
Mm.
belongs here, you know? Like if you
Mhm.
can't accept one part of me, then that means I don't belong. Like this is not the table. This is not the seat that I want. And we're trying to create our own table. Like this is what this
Yeah.
podcast is about too. Like imagining a queer spirituality. Like for me, when I think about ancestral work, I'm thinking about my queer ancestors. Like Audre Lorde guides me every day. I don't I think I engage her through her words, and she's been like a north star for me, you know.
Mm.
And and I didn't even know that was my spirituality. Like I didn't even realize that was like my form of spirituality. Like Black feminist theories guide me. And that's been my form of spirituality too, reading their work, connecting with them on their birthdays, thinking about them like that, like June Jordan. And I mean, honestly, Maya Angelou too, was one of the first experience. And Tazaki Shange. I mean, that's a different story because I got to meet Ntozake and she like changed me in a lot of ways. But just thinking about like Black femme elders, Black women elders, queer elders who I got to connect with in the spiritual realm, like that's my form of spirituality. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, it didn't occur to me till now, being here with you, that yeah, like in some ways I've always had a spiritual practice. That's always been my ritual. And it's kept me alive. Mm-hmm. It's kept me really grounded in my truth. This idea that I have ancestors who fought for me to be here in my truth, to be queer, to be Black, to be Dominican, to be proud, to be in this, body, like they fought for us to be here. And I'm still learning about them. There's names that I haven't mentioned here that I'm still learning about, and maybe I won't know their names, but I'm connected to them. And you're right. Thinking about like, we talk about shadow work. Don't get me started with shadow work, but I always find it fascinating when white folks talk about shadow work. And I'm like, how do you talk about shadow work, but you're not talking about the collective shadow of supremacy, of supremacy culture, of the oppression of Black, brown, indigenous folks, and other folks of color. Like, how do you do shadow work and you're not looking at that? To me, that's not really shadow work if you're not looking at that. Mm-hmm. And I think we do need to name and acknowledge the folks who are doing the work, who look like us. And to be real with you, I don't know them yet. So I'm excited to be on this journey with you. I don't know them yet.
I love that. Biany. Thank you so much for just sharing, how you feel about things and, how and where this is rooted and grounded for you, and just this experience of, coming together in community, thinking through like, what are our interests? What are the topics, that we want to talk about? I am just really excited to, talk more about what does faith-based, and spirituality mean? What are the differences, to talk more about how do we incorporate spirituality into sessions? How do we make it comfortable for our clients, to talk about magic and, mysticism, occult stuff, metaphysical stuff, spirits, like whatever it is. I'm excited to talk more about the ways that we are approaching decolonizing our practice. I'm excited to talk more about the ancestors that you mentioned, and yeah.
Oh, I love how you brought it together for us. Like, and that's just some of what we know we're talking about for those who are watching. Like, I'm excited. I hope you all are, who are really tuning in, that this is going to be a journey we're going on together to reclaim the sacred, to reclaim the soul. And this isn't just for clinicians and practitioners, but we are going to center y'all a little bit too, because we want you to change your approaches a little bit, or we want you to empower you to like, remember your gifts, remember that soul, that spiritual work that you already are doing. I think about the people that talk to me all the time that are like, I'm scared. Like, one of my clients brought up astrology and I didn't know what to do, or, and it's like, well, you do know, actually, like, be you, right? But there's a lot in our profession that we have to unlearn. And this podcast is the space for that too. We're creating a space for you to help you unlearn on the journey. Like, we're riding this journey with you to help you unlearn. To help you unlearn and relearn and remember.
Yeah. Remember, and reclaim.
And reclaim.
Yeah.
So we're at the point in the episode that we kind of want to, well, actually, wondering, Sequoia, how you feel. Like, is there anything else you want to say before we move on? Because I know, so Sequoia and I we can keep going.
Yeah.
We really have that connection that we can kind of, we can keep going, y'all. And that's a gift. You are lucky. You are lucky to
Yes.
have that.
Yes.
But let's
I
make sure
think
we have everything, covered.
yeah, I think, that we've shared about, how we met, what the kind of focus of the podcast is going to be. Definitely done, a little story time, a little storytelling, which is so important and like one of my like go-to interventions for a lot of things. We shared a little bit about our visions and goals and then what you can expect. And so, as Biany mentioned, we are moving into the segment of the podcast where we get to do a little bit of sharing, a little bit of show and tell. And it reminds me of, when I was younger in elementary school and I love show and tell because I got to see, what my friends were playing with at their house that I didn't know anything about, or they got to share some memory, from some item that they brought into class. And so we wanted to incorporate that into the podcast. And yeah, we want to share some resources at this point. And I think it would be cool if you want to pull a card.
Yes, that's
Okay.
honestly, you took me back to show and tell. Like I was excited about that too, just learning different parts of people, who they
Mm-hmm.
were outside of the classroom. And we
Mm-hmm.
want to share parts of us outside of this frame, like resources. And I am going to pull a card for us. And before I pull it, I want to show you the deck. Um,
Yeah.
and this is like my favorite part of any day. I love showing like new decks that we are using or we're working with. So stay tuned. You will see more decks from our collections. This deck is called Many Queens Tarot
I love that
by
deck.
Leslie Jane Rennekamp. And honestly, it's one of my soul decks. One of my soul decks. I just love the deck. It's hella queer, hella femme. It's
Yeah.
just so great. So I will pull a card for us. And yeah, thinking
Can
about the
you
takeaway. What were you going to say?
Okay.
Yeah.
I was
Go ahead.
gonna say, can you tell us something else about the deck? Like, is there one card in there that you really like that's like different from, I don't know, I
Mm.
always think about the star card because I'm an Aquarius. So I always look at the star cards in
I
decks.
like that. Yeah.
So is there a card that you're like, oh, this is a really cool rendition of the Chariot or the Four of Cups or
Well, I
something
would
like that?
say, all right. Oh, you got me hype. Okay.
Okay,
So
okay, okay, okay.
my favorite card in this deck is the Death card.
Oh, that's
Straight
cool.
up. So
Yes.
for the tarot enthusiast, tarot lovers, newbies, the Death card is ruled by Scorpio. It's a water sign. And I know sometimes people, the cards that have more shadow elements can be really scary. And I don't know, it's just even as a kid, my favorite card was the Death card. But this card is in
Mm-hmm.
action. You see the person's like in action. There's like a chariot element to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, like you see the person's like insides, right? Like the skull. Um, but then the flowers, the sun is in the background, the moon and the sun. I mean, it's just like I love,
I love
there's
that
so much
death
depth
card.
to this card.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I
So I
love that
often look
card.
for the Death card in a deck.
Cool.
And I'm often like, did they do it right by the Death card?
Mm-hmm.
There's something, and the Tower. I would say the Tower, but I think their Death
Mm-hmm.
card is great. Um,
Cool.
so
Thank
I
you.
will, yeah, thank you for asking. I will pull a card for us in terms of like a main takeaway, like maybe
Okay.
what our message is for today's episode, what we're taking away from today. Um, ooh, We got the Three of Swords.
Interesting.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And you know what's coming to me around this message of what we're taking away? I really feel like our work as healers is heart work, getting to the root, getting to the core, um, going deep. And when we think about the Three of Swords, it's like painful. You know, there's like three swords at a disembodied heart. And just thinking about the experience of release, relieving, acknowledging the pain, acknowledging the grief, uncovering what you might have been hiding. And yeah, just thinking a main takeaway for this is like our work is heart work, you know, and it might really get to some deep things. Like we're going deep, y'all. This is what this card is reminding us. We're doing some deep work here, but it's
Yeah.
also going to be fun. Deep don't always got to be. There's fun in the deep.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, for those who might be a little like jarred by this image, imagine like this is a disembodied heart. So it's not. There's no. It's just like kind of like take it from the message of like, oh, like heart work sometimes hurts, but it also liberates us. So let's
Mm-hmm.
imagine this card through a lens of like liberation too. We can free ourselves
Mm-hmm.
being with our
Mm-hmm.
truth and with our pain and with our hope.
Mm. I love that. I love that. And I think that that's absolutely what we talked about. We talked about just some of the challenges, that we've had within our identities,
Mm-hmm.
related to like those intersections for like our profession.
Right.
We talked about, challenges with community and networking and,
Mm-hmm.
just thinking through like our program and if we were or weren't introduced to, these concepts, so I think that's beautiful. It absolutely just affirms everything that we've been talking about.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I love that. Yay.
Oh my gosh,
Again,
I
many
love those
many
cards.
queens tarot. We will have we'll put a link in the description of like the deck so you can get your hands on it and
Yeah,
support indie artist.
that'll be cool. That'll be cool.
So it's your
I
turn for show and tell.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I am going to share a book that I recommend to everyone. It's on my bookshop link. Um and it's called Sustaining Spirit Self-Care for Social Justice by
Ooh.
Naomi Ortiz. And as you can see, let me flip it this way.
Oh, I love a worn
I
book. Mm.
I have sticky notes and page holders all out of the book. I write in here. But I purchased this book at the height of, I was introduced to the book and purchased the book at the height of me going through and processing emotional trauma. And I was lucky enough to take a 4 week session with the author of this book, and they walked through um, some amazing exercises that just affirm the lessons that are in the book.
Mm.
I really love the way that um, it's laid out. So it starts with a chapter on grandfather son, and then the remainder of the chapters are divided by elements. So there's an earth section to the
Mm.
book, there's a fire section, a water, and an air section. And then the book ends with Grandmother Moon.
Oh.
And all of Naomi's references, are about nature. At the end of every chapter, there are reflection questions for you to process, the stories and the places of growth that Naomi offers. What else do I want to say? Each Each chapter is really digestible in the sense that, they are at least maybe between like 3 to 6 page, like short chapters for you to review. And each one just again gives you a personal story and growth places, for you to continue to think on and reflect on. I refer I recommend this book to my clients that are organizers and activists.
Mm.
I keep saying refer. I recommend this book to, folks that are doing any kind of like human
Mm.
social service types of jobs. My clients that are executive directors, I recommend this book.
Can you show us
So
the cover again?
yes, I can.
It's a beautiful cover. We will have a link to your bookshop in the description too. We'll do that. Why don't we do
Okay.
that? Yeah.
Okay.
So
And
folks can
yeah,
support.
yeah. And Naomi is on Twitter and Instagram and just an amazing human being. I just
We might have to invite Naomi on one
Oh my
episode.
gosh. I just this book has just been a lifesaver. I always reference it, in any kind of workshop or offering. I reference this book. The reflection questions in it are amazing. There is a beautiful chapter at the end about um,
Would you like to read something? Like one of your favorite?
okay. Okay. There's so
Maybe like
much,
a
but I
favorite
was
line you have or something?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, actually, I'm glad you said that. Yes. What I was going to reference is that there is this amazing chapter at the end of this book. And we talked a lot about like ancestral practices and things like that. At the end of the book, there's a chapter called Rooting to Being an Elder. And it is
Mm.
just a beautiful reflection on how to embody your values, and that is the walk and the journey of, being an elder.
Oh,
And so I think that I'm saying that because, I think that if you're listening to this and our talks on ancestral practices resonated, that the end of um, that chapter might, might be right up your alley. But so the offer to read something. So I have a series out, an offering out that is specifically in relation to my practice around pleasure. My pleasure practice is cultivating a pleasure practice, and I named it after a chapter in this book called Building Pleasure Bridges. And I want the chapter is called Bridge to Palatable Pleasure. Um, but there is one section here that I think is so important.
I love how excited you are about this book. I just have to
Oh my
say,
gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
I have to get that book. I'm going to get that book.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. What do I want to read? Okay, I'll read this part. So again, this small chapter is about cultivating a pleasure practice, and Naomi says, making pleasure an event, one that I carefully pre-plan and may even pay money for, means I want to extend as much control over the overall situation as I can. Pleasure then becomes trying to do activities I enjoy while also expending time, energy, and money to find support and to plan for those activities, all in order to somewhat control the situation. I start thinking about the ways I habitually imagine pleasure. For example, eating out with friends or going to a concert instead of cooking a meal, or making music together. Building pleasure bridges into my day means making pleasure simpler to experience.
Mm.
There's so many good tidbits throughout that section, but yeah, that's it.
I love the idea of building practices throughout your day to cultivate pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so
Yeah,
easy for us to think, oh, we need to pay for that experience, or we need to um, dedicate a whole day to that experience. But if you just like weave it into your day, if it's like 5 to 10 minutes, like there are ways to cultivate pleasure. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Mm,
It's a really good chapter too because Naomi also goes into really like this capitalistic kind of foundation to pleasure, that if you
mm,
think about pleasure as like this goal and reward dynamic, that are you are inherently deserving of pleasure, that you don't have to reach a goal in order to have something that you enjoy, that you should just have the thing that you enjoy because you exist.
mm. You are worthy, simply put,
Yeah, yeah,
just because you
yep,
exist. I love that.
yeah, yeah.
All right, y'all. That was really good. I I am super excited about this book, and we are gonna just manifest this idea of getting Naomi on the show, on the podcast.
Okay,
We're gonna work on that.
okay.
That's why I'm saying it out loud. We're gonna work on that, y'all, because that is the kind of medicine that we will be bringing here. We hope to bring you that medicine of like this idea that pleasure is available to you, that you are simply worthy, and that's magic. That is
Mm-hmm.
magic.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, thank you
Yes.
for sharing this book and sharing
Yeah.
this medicine with us. Hmm. Ah, it's so interesting because there's so many takeaways we can reflect on in this moment. But I'm feeling really nourished right now. How about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. Same. Same. I my takeaway from this episode is, I'm really excited to, share this and, just be in community with folks, see what other kind of topics come up. Um, yeah, and I appreciate you. Thank
Mm,
you for doing this with me.
I appreciate you, friend. Um, yeah, there's so many takeaways, but I feel really nourished. My heart is open. I'm really here with you and grateful that we are on this journey. And we are grateful for y'all who are tuning in and watching this. Thank you for being here, and come back,
Yeah.
because we're coming
Yes.
back. Tune in next week. But before we get there, um, we are so grateful and we are so committed to creating a space for the magic, mysticism, metaphysical, divination, tarot, spirituality, healing, and mental health, and everything in between, y'all. So you got to tune in. You got to come back. And you got to like and subscribe that button so that you get notifications, so that you will be the first to hear about when our podcast episodes launch. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you like our episodes. Make sure you tag somebody, share it with your friends, share it with your the healers you work with.
Mhm.
Um, we really want to spread this message. And you got to tune in to our next episode, because we're going to be talking about ways that you can bring in spirituality into your work, whether that's in your session, whether you are a clinician or you are a client. And we also want to think about ways that you can bring spirituality into your day, y'all. So you can't miss out. Make sure you like this episode and make sure you subscribe so that you can get notifications. And we are going to include, you'll find it in the caption, the deck that we recommended and the book that we recommended too. So make sure you support these amazing healers and artists. And again, you really don't want to miss it. So make sure you subscribe to our channel and look out for some amazing, amazing episodes to come. Sequoia, do
Yeah.
you want to add?
Yeah, I'm just going to wrap us up here.
Yeah.
Thanks again, everyone, for being in community with us and supporting a heart centered podcast by two queer Black femme healers and spiritual social workers who explore the intersection of magic, spirituality, identity, and ancestral connections through the lens of tarot, divination, mysticism, mental health, and everything in between. As Biany mentioned, we would love to stay connected and build the spirituality and healing community. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel at Reclaiming Soul Work Podcast. Once you subscribe, you can set the reminder for notification, and you can also sign up at our landing page on our website to be notified when we have a new episode and for our future offerings. Thank you all so much. We'll see you again next week.
Thank you.